In this lesson, I'm going to explain how you can customize text using strokes, fill, sheens, and drop shadows. Let's go over to Working Files and open up Projects and go on down to Text Properties, 1605 Text Properties. This time we're going to work with a light yellow solid background. Go to the New Item button and click on Title. We'll call this one Text Properties. All right, we can turn on the background or not. The background shows yellow, otherwise you can turn it off and look at the transparency, whatever you feel good about. Let's add some text. You have the Type tool selected by default. Just click Anywhere. Type in text. That's the default font for me, the first one in the alphabetical order. I'm going to switch over to this font here, this style, to make it simple, and I'm going to make it really large. I'm going to take the upper right-hand corner here and drag it to the upper right-hand corner there. Take the lower left-hand corner and drag it down so we can see what we're doing here as we work on this text. Now, we don't need to worry about transform. That's more about its location here. We'll just close that out. And I'm not concerned about these font properties. In other words, how the text is laid out like that. So I'll close that down to give us some real estate here. We're going to start with fill. Right now, this is the simplest style. It just has white, solid fill and nothing else. No strokes, no shadows, nothing else. So let's change that. Starting with the fill type. You see it's a solid. It's also 3 different gradients and 3 other guys. Now, the bevel doesn't really work all that well. It's pretty tricky. And Illuminate and Ghost require shadows to work properly. So I'm going to skip these 3. If you want to find out more about them, feel free to check that out in the help file. We're going to look at the gradients. So I'll start with the linear gradient. Linear gradient is a 2-color gradient, and here are the 2 so-called color stops. The one that's blue like that means it's active. Over here, I'll make that active. Whichever one is active, then you can choose the color down here at the color stop color. You click on the color swatch there to do that. Opens up the color picker. Let's just pick red here or some other color that's kind of prominent, like that. That means now that this part of the text will be red. The other part isn't currently white. We can click on the other stop and then change its color to something like, let's say, green. You pick the color that works for you. And that is a linear gradient. Now you can adjust the nature of the gradient in terms of where things line up by dragging these little stops around. Notice how I'm pulling the red up to the top, pulling the green down like that, pulling it closer together so the green now dominates. If I want the text to be somewhat transparent, I can click on the color stop opacity. Whichever color stop is selected, which is the red one right now, I could drop the opacity on that. Look through it like so. If I turn on the yellow background, it might be more obvious. Goodbye, red text. You can make things fade away, which is helpful, particularly when you create shapes to use as a track matte. All right, I'm going to turn the yellow back off again. The linear gradient is a per character basis. If I change the angle, you'll see how the angle now is on a per character basis. It's not like angling through all the text as one word. It just goes through each character like that. And the repeat means you can repeat the gradient over and over again, like that. There you go. If I move the color stops, that'll change it too. You can cover the entire thing depending how far apart you pull the color stops. See how that works? Let's go to radial gradient now. Change to the radial gradient. See how each text item is a circle now? The color stops work the same way here. I click on one to make it active. I can change it from green to something else. There we go. If I pull it up, this is the center of the radial. You might not really get that as I pull it up there, but it's way down there. But I can adjust that by where I position these stops. Pull the stop down, and I can move that in like that. The next one down is a 4-color gradient. It's the same basic process. You choose one of the color stops and change the color. You can just have 4 different colors. I'm going to go make this a solid again because I want to work with a sheen. And it's a little more obvious when you work with a sheen to have a solid in the background to see what's going on. Switch back to solid. Maybe tone it down a bit. That's kind of bright red. Let's tone it down to not so bright. There we go. I'm going to add a sheen now. If I click on that, nothing will happen. I need to describe the sheen. Open this up. I want to describe the sheen in terms of its size. Now, a sheen is just kind of a line. You'll see that in a second. Makes it look like it's glowing. It's kind of cool. There you go. You can adjust the size of that, and you can adjust the angle as well. The offset means how far up and down the text is it. There we go. Change the color as well. I'm going to save texture for the next lesson, so I'm going to close this down now. Turn off sheen for the time being so we can kind of focus on the rest of these things here. You can add strokes, either inner or outer strokes. A stroke is an outline that goes around the text, either on the inside of the text or the outside of the text. Click Add. It adds 1 outer stroke. And default, it's 10 pixels wide, it's black, and it's an edge, as it's called. There are 3 kinds of strokes. There's depth, edge, and drop face. Depth looks like that, which gives it kind of a 3D feel. And drop face, well, what happened there, right? Drop face is like a drop shadow. It's just hiding back there. If I change the magnitude, you'll see it's back there like that. I'm going to go back to edge for now, though. So we have black now as the stroke. Let's change that by clicking on the color swatch there, and I'm going to make it blue by clicking here and clicking there and clicking OK. Now I'm going to add another stroke. So I go up here, Add, puts another stroke, and it goes outside of the current stroke. Wherever the current stroke is, this expands outside that. So if I change the first stroke to, let's say, 20, that's going to push this new one farther out like that. I'm going to expand this a little bit to the right so I can see more of the instructions like that, so you can see more as well. There you go. If I want to change the order, if I want that black on the inside and blue on the outside, I can move these guys up or down. If I move it over a little farther, you can see there's a move down there. I'm just going to move this guy up to like that. That makes it easy. So now black is on the inside and blue is on the outside. That's how strokes work. You could have a sheen with the stroke as well. You'll find lots of presets have sheens in the strokes. You have a sheen on one part of the stroke and a sheen on another stroke that's in a different location. Makes it look kind of cool. So I'm going to add a sheen here to this first one. There it goes. This time it comes on by default when you turn it on. You can change the offset a bit, change the angle a bit, like so. Then I can put a sheen on the blue one as well and have it go in a different place. Sheen there on the blue, and we can have it go a slightly different location, different angle, like that. Give it a sheen in a different direction like that. Change the offset a bit. You can add so-called texture to the stroke, so I'm going to explain that in the next lesson. Moving down here to shadow, add a drop shadow to it. You can barely see that something happened. Something kind of slid down there to the right. I'll move it a little bit farther by changing the distance. There's the drop shadow right there. You can define the drop shadow. You can say how opaque it is. 100% opaque, drop it down. So I want to change the angle. Right now it says minus 234, and it's kind of going down here where I think it would be like positive 135. But the way that angles work with text is just a little odd. Here's 0 degrees, as you'd expect, kind of pointing north. I'm going to go to 90 now. When it gets to 90, at 91, it's going to go to minus 269. Odd how that works, but you can just see it. There you go. You can increase the size of it. And then the spread will soften the edges. You go up to 100% spread, it just softens the edge. Not much, just a little bit around the edge. It doesn't make it much larger. And the distance is something you control again like that. Those are the 4 basic things that you can do to customize text. I'll just remind you again. It's fill, strokes, inner or outer strokes, sheen, and drop shadows. I'm going to explain how you can add texture and pictures and logos to your titles in the next lesson.